Tonight, we're just 4 days away from the South Carolina Republican primary, and the candidates are holding nothing back.
Donald Trump becomes president. The Second Amendment will be written out of the Constitution.
Lying guy. This guy's just a plain outlier.
Every other candidate in this race attacks him.
He gets on him.
The World Trade Center came down during the, reign of George Bush.
And Donald Trump continues his line of attacks against President George W. Bush.
Right? I mean, it came down.
Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is here tonight to respond. And Hillary Clinton starts barking, literally, while attacking Republicans. We'll see it here tonight on Hannity. Hannity starts right here, right now.
And welcome to Hannity. And tonight we're only 4 days away from the Republican primary in South Carolina. And according to the Real Clear Politics average out of the Palmetto State, Donald Trump has a double-digit lead over his rivals with 36.3%. Ted Cruz is in second with 17.8%. Marco Rubio in third with 15.8%. As all of the candidates now look to make gains in the polls ahead of this Saturday's primary, well, rhetoric out on the campaign trail, it's getting very heated. Take a look at this.
I pointed out Donald's record of being pro-choice for 60 years, of supporting partial birth abortion, and I pointed out that Donald, even today, supports taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood. And Marco's position right now is he supports a pathway to citizenship for the 12 million people who are here illegally.
This has been a pattern now with Ted. I mean, he spent the last 2 weeks literally just making stuff up. Even today, he's out there giving a speech on national defense. He's just ignoring his record on it. Every national defense authorization bill that he's had a chance to vote on, he's voted against. Every single one. And those are the bills that authorize spending on Fort Jackson, on the Armory here, on troop pay increases.
Marco Rubio, who's a great guy, believes in increased defense spending, but he claims he has foreign policy experience because he goes to committee hearings.
Bush made a statement. It was like this jumbled up statement with all sorts of, it was ridiculous. And everyone said, yeah. But, Ted holds up the Bible, and then he lies about so many things. And, these are lies.
All right, here with reaction, the author of the New York Times bestseller, Duplicity, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. All right, so you won South Carolina. This is very predictable. I can give you the history, give our audience the history of this. Does any of this rhetoric this week surprise you heading into Saturday?
I think it's pretty tough, even by South Carolina standards.
Yeah.
And when you have everybody yelling, "You're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar," it's pretty strange. But I have to take 3 seconds, Sean, to say, I think the Hillary barking thing may be the weirdest thing by a major presidential candidate I have ever seen. When I first saw it,
I'm going to get to it later. You're blowing my show here.
No, I'm just telling you. You had her yipping a minute ago. That is so weird. It makes anything Republicans do seem normal.
Yeah. Well, between that and she almost changed on the spot in that speech in Iowa, and she echoed it in New Hampshire. In terms of trying to out Bernie and out socialist Bernie Sanders, which tells me, well, now there's real desperation setting in that campaign.
Well,
in Nevada,
you could have on Saturday, Sanders win Nevada, Trump win South Carolina. Now that's a revolution in American politics if those two things happen.
The polls, well, it's a little closer in Nevada, especially Hillary had a slight lead, but she was up by 25 points. This was supposed to be the firewall for her. If you read the reports today, they're in the, quote, state of panic is palpable, one reporter wrote, and they are scared to death. And now they're talking about, well, the electorate in Nevada may be too white. There may not be enough minorities. It may not be indicative of what the real campaign is about, which is kind of the argument they made and excuses they made in New Hampshire.
What kind of candidate, though, starts by saying, I can't get any white votes. Please take me somewhere where there aren't any white votes. Think about the whole logic of the Clinton campaign now, and it gets confused. But think about this also. I did a piece that will come out tomorrow. I do 2 free newsletters a week at gingrichproductions.com. And I'm writing about the fact you now have these 2 alternative universes. Here in the middle, you've got the deal-making traditional politicians. Over here, you've got Sanders, who lives in his own world. And over here, you have Trump, who lives in his own world. And the rest of us are having a hard time understanding it because these are turning out to be very big universes. And I frankly thought when Trump took on George W. Bush in a state where Bush is very popular, about 84% approval, I thought he would suffer in the polls. And he doesn't. I mean, people who like Donald Trump are willing to say, he's sincere, he's tough, maybe sometimes he goes a little overboard, but he's doing it in the right direction. And that lead that you're citing that now is pretty clear. It's an amazing lead for him to go into this Saturday with in South Carolina.
He does transcend conventional political gravity. I've used that phrase all throughout this process, and there's been many predictions of his demise, none of which obviously have come true. But it seems the Republican establishment is just in a state of panic. They hate Trump and they hate Cruz, and Trump and Cruz keep being number 1 and 2. So,
well, you had the Clinton establishment's in a state of panic, and the traditional Republican establishment's in a state of panic, and that's because out here, the American people are migrating away from the traditional deal-making center and moving to two very dramatically different visions of America's future.
Are you confident, assuming Trump wins South Carolina, it's probably going to be hard to stop him. Now, they're going to head to Nevada, and then, of course, it's the big SEC Super Tuesday primary. That's going to tell us everything. We may now have a very clear picture that it may become unstoppable. So, what advice do you have for him or any of the other candidates here?
Well, I think they all have totally different situations. And Cruz has got to, I think, be the conservative who tries to slow down the train, if you will, when you get to the southern primaries. But I think he and Rubio now are about tied. And, of course, that's part of the problem from the standpoint of how do you stop Trump. He's only at 35%, which if everybody else consolidated might mean he would lose. Might not, by the way, because you can't be sure all those votes would go to anybody other than Trump. But that's the theory of the Republican establishment. I got several emails today from people saying, gee, if you take this, you do this, you do this. The problem they got is Bush isn't going to drop out. Rubio's not going to drop out. Cruz isn't going to drop out. Kasich is not going to drop out. Carson may be less of a factor, but take those 4. Why should any one of them say, I'm going to sacrifice and quit so we can consolidate? And the result is, I think you very likely are going to see Trump. I wish he were a little more presidential. I think it would be better for him. I think it would be better for the country. But I got to say, this aggressive, strident style, he is holding his base together in a way that I really thought he would suffer from the debate performance the other night, and it doesn't seem to have had any impact at all.
Do you see a path to him in a general election? Do you see a path that's very different than either Ted? Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because think about the general election. Does he get to run against
Hillary or the socialist?
This is, by the way, remember, the reason she's barking is that they had a dog in Bill's race that was trained to bark when the candidate lied. Yeah. I mean, how could you have that dog near Hillary Clinton without it barking all the time? So, on the one hand, you could have Trump versus the most dishonest candidate in modern times, or you could have Bernie promising that he'll eliminate all billionaires, and Trump promising to make all of us a billionaire, and you get to decide which of these two futures do you like better. I mean, in some ways, I kind of like the idea of a Trump versus Sanders. Let's choose. You want free enterprise, you want socialism, you want gigantic bureaucracies, you want to be out here working every morning trying to make your way forward. It would be a fascinating race.
All right, I have a very important question. To me, Republicans in Washington that the base 60% of them or so feel betrayed by, I think this is a do-or-die moment as it relates to the Supreme Court. I'm going to ask you that question when we get back. We'll have more with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, when we get back, and I'll ask him about that looming showdown between the president and Republicans over the now vacant Supreme Court seat, and also tonight.
How did he keep us safe when the World Trade Center, during his time in office, came down? If you go back, you will see the CIA and other agencies had information that bad things were going to happen. And yes, the answer is he should have known.
All right, Donald Trump continues his attacks against former President George W. Bush. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is here to respond tonight. Plus,
well, the Great Recession was caused by too much regulation.
It is surreal. The video everyone's talking about, Hillary Clinton barking like a dog, all in an attempt to attack Republicans. That and more on this busy news night tonight on Hannity. shaping up to be a heated political battle in Washington. Here with reaction, author of Undemocratic from the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, and George Washington law professor Jonathan Turley. Good to see you both. Constitutionally, if either one of you can tell me, is it within the Senate's right, their constitutional role, advice and consent, is it within their right to wait? Jay Sekulow.
Of course. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution gives power of the president to nominate, but it's up to the Senate to advise and consent, and they could decide not even to have a hearing for that matter. So while I don't disagree that the president feels like he has the obligation, I get it, to put a nomination forward. I think the Republicans need to say no, because the next nominee, the next justice of the Supreme Court, will affect the outcome of decisions probably a lot longer than Jonathan Turley and I will be around. I mean, for generations. Yeah. So the reality is, I think that the Senate needs to have the backbone to do what the Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, said they would do to President Bush, and what the Democrats said in 1960 to Eisenhower. So yeah, I think this is as old as Supreme Court nominations itself. This is what the Constitution, elections have consequences. Yep, the president gets to appoint, but the consequence of the Senate being controlled by the Republicans doesn't mean his nominee gets through.
I think that's well said. It is funny what I played earlier, Jonathan Turley, and in July of 2007, Chuck Schumer had a very different opinion that he's now talking about. But what is your take on it?
Well, it's actually quite interesting also that as Senator Obama, he participated in the filibuster of Justice Alito. And so there's a long history for this type of decision. It is certainly true that when you're given the power of advice and consent, you can also refuse consent. There is no requirement for them to take up a nomination. I happen to think it would be a good thing for them to give a hearing to this nominee. But I also believe that it would be important for President Obama to confirm that he's not going to use a recess appointment. When he was asked that in his press conference, he didn't actually say, I won't do a recess appointment. He just said, my expectations are that they will hold hearings and give a vote.
Wouldn't Mitch McConnell be able to, from here on forward, through the rest of President Obama's term, not go into recess?
Well, the problem is the end of session when right before the new president comes in. I think that would be a terrible recess appointment to be made. I'm a critic of recess appointments generally to the judiciary. But in that gap between the election and the new administration, he would have the ability to do a recess appointment.
Yeah, Jay, it seems to me that they can just stay in session,
the recess appointment. Yeah, the recess appointment clause allows for the Senate to not go into recess. So the Supreme Court was very clear, most recently in NLRB versus Canning, that they have the right to stay in session and they determine the rules. But there's something else interesting, which Jonathan said, which is, I think, to point out, and that is Barack Obama himself was one of the people that voted for a filibuster of Samuel Alito. That's what he was encouraging, was a filibuster. What's interesting about that, he was asked that today at the press conference, and he really had no response because the president knows exactly what he's up against. And I think, of course, a recess appointment, look, it would put the court in chaos for a year, so to speak, but then the recess would be over, and depending on who the president is, you'd have a selection and the process go forward. But I think it's fair to say that the Republicans can prevent this and can use parliamentary rules to prevent it and need to do everything they can to do that.
And if I was Mitch McConnell, I'd stay in session, which he has the power to do.
Not kidding.
Guys, thank you both. Appreciate your insight. Thank you. And coming up, Donald Trump has been attacking President George W. Bush on the campaign trail. We'll get former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani's take on all of that. And also later tonight, you don't want to miss this.
Oh, the Great Recession was caused by too much regulation.
I laugh every time I see it. Hillary barking like a dog to attack Republicans during a campaign rally. We'll check in with Monica Crowley and Juan Williams. They will be here with reaction and more straight ahead.
The World Trade Center came down during your brother's reign. Remember that.
The World Trade Center came down during his reign, so you can't say that we were safe under his reign when the World Trade Center comes down and the CIA said something like that was going to happen.
When Jeb Bush gets upset, my brother kept America safe. How did he keep us safe when the World Trade Center, during his time in office, came down? You go back, you will see the CIA and other agencies had information that bad things were going to happen. And yes, the answer is he should have known.
Excuse me, the World Trade Center came down during the, reign of George Bush, right? I mean, it came down. I'm sorry, but we weren't safe. The World Trade Center came down, which was the greatest attack in history on this country.
All right, that was Donald Trump going after President George W. Bush in recent days. And while the 43rd president is not directly responding to Trump's remarks, Vice President Dick Cheney, on the other hand, is firing back. Take a look.
He sounds like a liberal Democrat to me, Brett. He's wrong, and he's I think, deliberately promoting those views in order to advance his political interest. It's a disappointment, frankly, that he's acting that way. I haven't endorsed anybody. I don't have an axe to grind in terms of that, but I think it's misleading for him to campaign on that basis. The way he treats these issues and the people involved in it does, I think, a great service to the tremendous disservice to the tremendous record of our military and our intelligence personnel who put their lives on the line during that period of time.
All right, joining me with reaction, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. This whole idea about responsibility for bin Laden. I'm going to play a tape for you. This is Bill Clinton admitting he was offered bin Laden and that bin Laden was a threat to the United States, but he didn't have a legal justification to take him. This, to me, says everything we need to know about how we had a pre-9/11 mindset and where the mistake was made. Let's roll this tape.
Mr. bin Laden used to live in Sudan. He was expelled from Saudi Arabia in 91 and he went to Sudan. And we did a period with two and he wanted Americans to start dealing with them again. They released him. At the time, 96, he had committed no crime against America, so I did not bring him here because we had no basis on which to hold him. So we knew he wanted to commit crimes against America. So I pleaded with the Saudis to take him because they could have, but they thought it was an opposite and they didn't, and that's why I wound up in Afghanistan.
He knew he wanted to commit crimes against the U.S. I had no legal justification to bring him here. Wasn't that a huge mistake? Isn't it?
Yeah, it was a huge mistake, but a huge mistake in retrospect. A mistake at the time. Now, what do I mean by that? We didn't understand the gravity of it until after 9/11. And I have consistently, from the day it happened, and there are very few people that have been affected by 9/11 as much as I have.
I know.
I don't hold President Clinton accountable, and I don't hold President Bush accountable. And in fact, the words that Marco Rubio used in the debate the other night, eerily, are exactly the same words I used on September 11, 2001. I grabbed Bernie Kerrick's arm when the second building came down, and I said, "Thank God George Bush is the President of the United States." I repeated it, it's right here, at my keynote speech at the 2004 convention, and got a standing ovation. And to this day, I will tell you this. In history, George W. Bush will go down as a great president because he protected America. He, for whatever mistakes we made before, and they were mistakes, they weren't lies, they weren't misrepresentations. If President Clinton ever thought that bin Laden was that kind of threat to America, he would have attacked him. He didn't get it. Once we got it, what George W. Bush did was, within 1 month, we put them on their heels.
To my interpretation,
and that's why we were safe. We were safe. We were safe for 8 years because George Bush drove them into caves. And when you're in caves, you can't fight. You can't plan attacks. And what Obama did is just the opposite. Obama gave him the room to operate. And there's no way you can compare Bush and Obama.
Well, that was the other side of the mistake, where we had cities like Ramadi, Fallujah, Mosul, and Tikrit, and now they're in the hands of ISIS and all the oil, so they have more land mass and more money than any terrorist group in history.
You and I both like Donald very much. We consider him a personal friend. I also consider Jeb a personal friend, and Marco. They're all my friends. And like Vice President Cheney, I haven't picked anyone yet. But I don't like this idea of saying that George W. Bush lied. I know George W. Bush. He doesn't lie. He is about as honest a man as I've ever met. And in my view, and Democrats can go crazy if they want, I believe he was a great president.
I think what he did
I think he was a great president.
I think Donald's disagreement has more to do because he disagreed, and I battled him at the time. He did not want us to go to Iraq. He was dead set against it. But now he says Now that we went there, you got to win. And then he adds the point, which I don't actually disagree with: take the oil, give it to the military.
Yes. And there's no question that President Bush made mistakes. The invasion, perfect. Couldn't have done it better. The occupation, a disaster.
But then they fixed it.
The surge
worked.
Ingenious.
Right.
So, end result is you hand over Iraq in pretty good shape to Obama. Now, maybe you didn't get there directly, you got there indirectly, but President Bush, with regard to protecting our country from the day after September 11 happened, which is when you would really get it, did a great job.
I want to go. You've kind of been our go-to guy on Hillary. Now that we have the Inspector General report for the intelligence community and dozens and dozens of emails on her server that were beyond top secret. They were SAP classification, special access programs. My sources tell me the FBI is going to make a criminal referral. A criminal referral to the Justice Department. What does that mean if they're right? Because you suspect that's going to happen too.
Well, I have sources also. I know the FBI really well, as you know.
Do you agree that that's likely to happen?
I know there are FBI agents on the case who feel very, very strongly about it. I have been told, I don't know how true it is, that if there isn't, they may very well resign.
But you heard what I heard, that a criminal referral will be made to the Justice Department.
Yes. They will recommend indictment on several counts. I don't know about Clinton Foundation, possibly even.
But they're looking into that now. That's the next phase. They already finished the email phase.
And look, this was my business more than politics. I can see the evidence. I can see standing up in court and how I could convict her.
How does she act the way she's acting?
If I were her, I'd be sitting with, the best criminal lawyer in America trying to.
If it was me, I'd hire you. That's what I would do. I'd say, I need you to work.
I don't think she'd pick me, but I'm not bad.
You'd be the right guy to. Last thing, because we got to roll. Quick word on Justice Scalia. You knew him.
Nino Scalia, I knew when I was a young lawyer, deputy to the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. He was the head of the Office of Legal Counsel, and I used to sit at meetings during the Ford administration in the Levy Justice Department, and Robert Bork and Nino Scalia would debate each other, and it was better than being in law school, and they agreed with each other, but they'd figure out a way to disagree to prove who was smarter. Except I'll tell you one thing about Nino. He played the piano, sang, greatest guy you'd ever meet.
Loved life.
And he had a political and a legal philosophy that overlapped that's going to last forever.
Originalism.
It is something, it won't always prevail, but it'll be something you're going to have to encounter 100 years from now when you're interpreting legal opinions. The man was one of our great legal geniuses.
Absolutely.
And one of our nicest people.
Good, well said. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And coming up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
Oh, the Great Recession was caused by too much regulation.
The mayor's laughing. You didn't hear that before? Hillary barking like a dog to attack her Republican rivals. Monica Crowley and Juan Williams are next. Welcome back to Hannity. So Hillary Clinton is often dogged by criticisms over her harsh tone on the campaign trail, but now the Democratic hopeful is literally barking at Republican opponents. You're going to love this. Take a look.
One of my favorite political ads of all time was a radio ad, rural Arkansas, where the announcer said, wouldn't it be great if somebody running for office said something, we could have an immediate reaction as to whether it was true or not? Well, we've trained this dog, and the dog, if it's not true, he's going to bark. I'm trying to figure out how we can do that with the Republicans. The Great Recession was caused by too much regulation.
Seriously? Seriously? Joining us now with reaction, co-host of The Five, our friend Juan Williams, our other friend, Fox News contributor Monica Crowley. Really? Barking? That's what... barking?
It's pretty effective. The audience liked it. And it's led to mockery by you, so it's getting a lot of attention.
Oh, that means that's a big deal, right?
Wait, come on. You don't like Hillary, and you think this is ridiculous and reduces her to an object of mockery.
Her firewall, Nevada, is now in play. And apparently, I'll quote John Ralston, dean of the Silver State Press Corps, the Clinton panic is palpable, and Clinton aides are bending over backwards to lower expectations for Saturday night. She's in trouble.
You can see the panic because she is barking literally on the campaign trail. What in the actual hell was that? Look, we've seen this movie before, Sean, 2008. But it's one thing to lose to the hip black guy. It's another thing to be losing to the 74-year-old socialist. She couldn't believe she was losing in 2008, and the panic started to set in. Remember the fake tears in New Hampshire, which actually won her New Hampshire, but then she lost. You saw the panic. They bring out Bill. This time around, they're bringing out Bill. They're bringing out Chelsea, and nothing is working. So you can start to see the Clinton meltdown happening probably earlier than anybody expected, not least of all her.
Oh, and now Bill's a big problem because Bill's going rogue again, and he's going after Bernie Sanders. He's off script, and that's panicking them as well.
Well, I don't know if panic is the right word because Bill Clinton's still so popular, but the idea is...
He's a shell of his former self.
Well, I think he's looking older, but I do think this. Bill Clinton remains popular, and then you hear from people like David Axelrod, who was President Obama's guru, who say, you know what, when it comes to defending his wife, he becomes vitriolic, histrionic. These are his words, and as a result, it looks like things are out of control, and it then leads to this notion of panic. But let me just say, it's not, at this point, worthy of panic. It's that she's not winning by as much as she was in earlier
I don't know if she's even going to win Nevada.
Oh, you're wrong.
Now, here's the thing. She comes out of Iowa and New Hampshire with this angry, loud, screaming into the microphone. I played it a lot. I won't play it again here. She seems to be a chameleon. Now she's going to out Bernie and be more socialist than him. Oh. If she goes before a predominantly black audience, she met with Al Sharpton recently, earlier today. She panders it to that audience, like this example.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy.
So after Iowa and New Hampshire, she's a super socialist, more socialist than Bernie. She goes before a predominantly black audience. She changes her tone, her cadence, to pander for votes.
The most effective politicians are those who have a lot of emotional intelligence. I'm not talking IQ, I'm talking EQ. Mm-hmm. And they know how to calibrate their emotional responses in victory, in defeat, talking to different constituencies. Hillary Clinton seems to be missing that chip in her brain. Either she doesn't have the emotional intelligence, or she hyperreacts or underreacts, and so you get this kind of response from the audience where they don't know how to respond.
That is the most intelligent analysis I think that I have heard about her on this.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you, Sean. I'm not too far from Monica on this, but I will say I have this difference. I'm very careful with her as a woman candidate. When you have others, and it's not rare in American politics to see somebody go before an Irish crowd or a Jewish crowd and pick up the tone, the dialect, the language.
Oh, we bit of the Irish in you, Juan.
Yeah.
I can see you going before the Irish and my peoples.
But I think Hillary has been...
What's an Irish 7-course meal?
You tell me, bro.
A 6-pack and a potato?
Well, there we go. See? Politicians know how to play this game. But what I will say is I think she has been disappointing. No, let me finish on Monica's point. I think Monica's onto something when she says Hillary doesn't seem to have that EQ, emotional quotient, or emotional intelligence of a great candidate that can fire up, and in Hillary's case, fire up young Democrats who are, I know you two are going to hate it, much more aligned with socialism and liberalism than even Hillary Clinton, who's middle of the road to them and old and established.
Wait till they start working and they see that 50 to 60% of their paycheck is taken by government.
Wait a second.
State,
how does
federal, FICA, property, sales taxes, and everything else.
A minute ago, you're attacking middle of the road Hillary as old. She's
not middle. She's now moving.
But now you're after Bernie.
No.
Bernie is the one that would take your money.
Well,
so will Hillary. She's trying to out Bernie.
She's not out
Bernie is speaking the language of the millennials, right? He talks about income inequality. He's got this hopeful message. We know it's all, BS, but the kids listen to it. Hillary doesn't have that message. She has no compelling reason for her candidacy beyond I'm a woman and it's my turn.
No,
and
she can beat
they
the
don't care about
Republicans.
that.
Yeah. She can beat the Republicans.
In an
she has
orange
more
jumpsuit.
experience.
They don't think so.
I think they think so.
In black and white stripes and shoes without laces, or an orange jumpsuit. All right, we got to go.
Orange is the new black, Sean.
You know, if I can make Juan laugh, I'm doing my job.
That was pretty good.
And coming up, we need your help. A very important question of the day. That's next. All right, time for our very important question of the day. Should Republicans block President Obama's Supreme Court nominee? Absolutely. They should. He's done enough damage to the country. Just go to Facebook.com/Sean Hannity, @Sean Hannity on Twitter. You know what the big question here is? Will the Republicans have the backbone to hold the line? It's make or break time for them. We'll see. But that's all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hi, I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Let's get straight to our top story. Donald Trump versus Ted Cruz. Both sides are unleashing vicious broadsides against each other, with their attacks escalating over the past few days.
I've never seen anybody that lied as much as Ted Cruz. He's a lying guy, a really lying guy. Some people misrepresent. This guy's just a plain out liar.
Truth matters. You cannot simply scream liar when somebody points out the actual position of Donald Trump. So I will continue to focus on substance and truth and let other candidates focus on the insults and attacks.
And the Cruz campaign isn't stopping there, releasing a fresh attack ad taking aim at Donald Trump.
Between sips of wine and bites of salad, a Planned Parenthood doctor discusses getting money for tissue from aborted fetuses.
Harvesting the organs of aborted fetuses for money.
Planned Parenthood treats the unborn like another form of currency, and yet some politicians still defend them.
Planned Parenthood serves a good function. We have to look at the positive.
Donald Trump is just plain wrong.
And Trump fired back today.
This guy, Cruz, comes out, well, I don't think he's going to win. This guy is so strident and so nasty, he's going to lose every single state.
Well, this battle between Trump and Cruz isn't costing Trump support, at least not yet. A new survey by Public Policy Polling, a Democratic group, shows Trump maintaining a strong lead in South Carolina, with 35% of likely Republican voters backing him. Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are tied for second at 18%, followed by John Kasich at 10%, then Jeb Bush and Ben Carson tied at 7%. Joining us now with reaction from Columbia, South Carolina, Alice Stewart, senior advisor for the Cruz campaign, and from Dallas, Trump national spokesperson Katrina Pearson. Now, Katrina and Alice, no two better people sitting right here to debate all the recent events between your two candidates. I'm going to start with you, Katrina. Donald has said Ted Cruz has repeatedly lied about him and is ready to sue. Is that the case? Will Trump sue Cruz for libel?
Well, he actually might, considering how a lot of these attacks against Mr. Trump are not true. And specifically with this new ad on Planned Parenthood, Donald Trump simply says that cervical cancer screening for poor women is a good thing, even though he opposes abortion and opposes funding for abortion for Planned Parenthood. But the Cruz campaign wants to take it a little bit further. It's obvious that Senator Cruz needs South Carolina to move forward, and he's not going to stop at anything, including misrepresenting his positions on pretty much everything at this point, Eric.
Okay, Alice, is Ted Cruz concerned about being sued in the middle of a fight for the GOP nomination?
Well, if Donald Trump wants to sue, bring it on. And the fact of the matter is, Ted Cruz has done nothing but point out Donald Trump's exact words exactly as he said them. And he has said that he supports the nation's largest abortion provider. He has said he is pro-choice. He has said that Planned Parenthood does some great things. And so what I don't understand, I want to ask Katrina, the nation's largest abortion provider, how can he compete in a state like South Carolina when he supports abortion?
Katrina?
Well, first I'd like to ask Alice if she actually believes Mr. Trump supports abortion, because the ads that the campaign are running are from 17 years ago. Mr. Trump hasn't been pro-abortion for a very long time. He has been pro-life. He's told stories on the campaign trail about that transition. Senator Cruz props up people like Ronald Reagan, who, as governor of California, signed the most liberal piece of abortion legislation in that state in the country's history. Alice, Mr. Trump is pro-life, and the Cruz campaign knows it.
Alice.
Well, it was just last week when we were on the debate stage when Donald Trump said that he supports taxpayer funding for the nation's largest abortion provider. So we're talking last week, not 17 years ago. He has said repeatedly
Mr. Trump said he supports.
He has said repeatedly
he supports the good things like cervical cancer screenings. Do you think poor women shouldn't have cervical cancer screenings?
Planned Parenthood is the nation's largest abortion provider. He supports the nation's largest abortion provider, and South Carolina is a pro-life state. The Republican Party is a pro-life party, and you cannot go around saying that you're pro-life when you support funding for Planned Parenthood. In addition to that, he has said repeatedly that he thinks they do good things when they are a large abortion provider. He has also said he supported Democrat candidates over the years.
He also supported Ted Cruz. He's donated to Ted Cruz.
Hold on, guys. We can go back and forth on this. I mean, Alice, honestly, there are a lot of candidates who've changed positions on certain things. For example, on immigration. Some would say Ted Cruz has changed his position on immigration over the years as well. Should you be holding Donald Trump to the standard of what he said, as Katrina points? I'm not sure about that 17 years ago number, but if in fact it was 17 years ago that he said it, should he be held to that standard now?
He should be held to the standard of what he said on the debate stage just last week, Eric, and that's what people are basing their decision on it. And when it comes to immigration, no one fought harder against Marco Rubio and the Gang of Eight and their amnesty program than Ted Cruz in Washington, D.C. And here's the fact. I'm in South Carolina. We have been out on the campaign trail for days here in South Carolina talking to South Carolinians about issues that they are concerned with, not some Donald Trump just calling his opponents liars and nasty. Ted Cruz this morning gave a phenomenal national security speech here in Charleston, where he talked about the importance of funding and building up our military. Barack Obama has spent the past 7 years with our national security on the back burner. Ted Cruz will put it on the front burner. This afternoon, we were out on the campaign trail with Texas former Governor Rick Perry, and Medal of Honor recipient Dakota Meyer, talking about our vets and improving health.
Katrina.
Donald Trump is pro-life and has been for a very long time. We, too, are on the ground in South Carolina listening to the voters who think that a lot of these things that the Cruz campaign are doing are very sleazy, from Iowa all the way to South Carolina with these horrible push polls. And I will say this with regards to immigration. Donald Trump is the most solid on immigration as we've seen. And the only reason we're having this discussion is because of Donald Trump. On Senator Cruz's own YouTube page, he is praising bringing Syrian refugees to this country because it's the right thing to do for America. He flip-flopped on that after Mr. Trump came out against it. He supported increasing HB1 visas and green cards to the tune of $33 million.
We can't go through the complete platforms of both candidates. What I'd like to talk about a little bit, we don't have a ton of time. I'm going to start with you, Katrina. In the aftermath of the last debate, where Donald Trump had mentioned some things about George W. Bush, yet afterwards the poll numbers haven't seemed to have budged. Is he concerned? Are you hearing on the ground that that's going to affect anything going forward, going into Saturday's primary?
No, not at all, Eric. The people on the ground in South Carolina and all over the country are tired of the transnational corporation-backed people like Senator Ted Cruz, who promotes Obama trade. They're tired of it. They want their jobs back. They want to make things in this country again. They want to secure the borders. They want to stop immigration. They want to deport criminal aliens. The people on the ground get it. They're very used to politics and politicians alike, and that's why we see the poll numbers staying the same.
And what do you say, Alice? Is Ted Cruz concerned that the poll numbers in the aftermath of the, what a lot of people thought was this is the one thing that's going to get Donald Trump, his numbers to come down, after all the other things, was going to be the one because George W. Bush seems to be beloved, but it hasn't seemed to budge. Is Ted Cruz concerned that maybe he shouldn't have picked this fight?
Well, here's the thing. Ted Cruz has done nothing more than point out Donald Trump's own record and his own words. And for it's sad that Katrina has to defend someone who basically says anyone that calls out his record is lying. That's a pretty weak defense. And just by saying someone's a liar, does not address the issue. So, it's unfortunate
but here's the issue. Honestly, here's where the rubber meets the road. You look at the last poll, the poll we just cited. Ted Cruz was solidly in second prior to that poll. Now he's tied for second. His numbers have slid a bit. Is this a concern in the Cruz camp?
Now, we're encouraged by the crowds we've seen here on the ground in South Carolina. We're making tens of thousands of phone calls every day and knocking on doors and having tremendous surrogates out here on the trail with us. And keep in mind, the polls had Donald Trump in first in Iowa, and we had a resounding victory in Iowa. So we're looking forward to Saturday.
We're going to have to leave it right there, ladies. Thank you very much. Hot debate. Next on the rundown, Donald Trump unloading on former President George W. Bush and his role surrounding the 9/11 attacks. Could that backfire in South Carolina? That debate upcoming.
You know, the Great Recession was caused by too much regulation. You know?
It is surreal. The video everyone's talking about, Hillary Clinton barking like a dog, all in an attempt to attack Republicans. That and more on this busy news night tonight on Hannity.